Coming up on the Greg and Tim Show podcast.
Mr. Dressup. Do you know Mr. Dressup?
Yes, I do.
I still didn't watch the podcast.
Bombers absolutely, without a doubt, destroyed any hope the Saskatchewan Roughriders had that they had a football team.
Welcome to the second episode of the Greg and Tim Show. And here are your hosts, Greg and the Time. Got it on the first take.
Well, thanks a lot, Billy, for that exciting intro. And welcome back to another exciting episode of the Greg and Tim Show. I'm one of your hosts, Tim, and alongside me is the second of our twosome, Greg.
Thanks, Tim. And welcome everyone to the show. We got a great show. I'm super thrilled about everything that we're going to talk about.
That's right, Greg. Remember what happened in our debut episode, our pilot?
Our debut.
Our pilot, we introduced ourselves. What else did we do? We gave them a glimpse into our lives.
We talked about our families.
People got to know us, right?
Sewing machines.
That's right.
Great.
You said you didn't know what romper room was.
That's
you
correct.
Lied.
I didn't know what romper room
never
was.
trust
I
you
knew
again.
who Shaka Khan was.
Yes.
I didn't know who romper room was.
And that is sad. Mr. Dressup. Do you know Mr. Dressup?
Yes, I do.
Oh, okay.
I know Mr. Dressup.
Mr. Dressup. Okay. Ernie Combs, 30 years? Yeah, I would hope so.
Yeah. What was the little Ernie? What was the puppet's name?
The puppet's name was, I'm blanking.
Phineas. Finnerd?
Someone
Phineas.
in Google
Phineas.
Land,
I think it's Casey
and
Finnegan.
That's
Casey
right.
and Finnegan. Those were the two puppets.
And the Concords. You didn't know what the Concords were. The Montreal Concords.
We didn't actually leave that in the show.
CFL experts. We didn't have that in the show. You didn't have it. Well,
did you listen to the show?
Completely. I did.
Completely cut
it out. Listened. I must have missed that part. But in the first episode, we cut out a part where Greg had no idea the Montreal Concords were a CFL team in the mid-'80s.
Yes, that's correct.
And now it's not interesting.
Because nobody heard about it.
Anyway, we talked about our experience at the Men's Golf Classic tournament, and we'll get into that in a bit, so we're not going to get into that right now.
100%.
And a bunch of other random things that were on our minds. And you know what? Episode 2 kicks off now. Are you excited, Greg?
I'm pumped. It should be a really good time. We got a whole bunch of stuff. We're going to go into some in-depth topics, and we're going to give them a little life hack that I learned. Yeah. That I actually got to do with you, and we're going to tell a whole story, but that's going to be later on in the show.
Actually, I'm excited about that. I know all about it, but I'm excited that the people that are listening are going to hear about it because I think it's an amazing story.
I think it's fantastic.
So I think we should invite everyone to grab their favorite beverage, get comfortable, and join us as we explore some fun topics on the Greg and Tim Show. Let's roll it.
I got Al's breakfast this morning. I guess this evening, whenever. It's Al's breakfast.
It's all the same. Not at all, but whatever.
Coffee's not the same as Al's, though. Al's has good coffee, and it's unlimited.
Did we talk about Al's?
We never talked about Al's.
We're just saying, we're just referencing Al's now. I'm not telling anyone what it is.
We will talk about Al's sometime.
Sometime?
But that's my coffee.
This episode?
I guess we'll see.
We'll see.
First thing on the agenda that I have, just a couple house cleaning things. You know, what do you call it? Housekeeping?
Yeah.
Housekeeping items. Last week we had some technical difficulties in the middle of the episode, which allowed us to not have any video for a little while. That was good. That was Billy's fault. Secondly,
so I actually listened to I still didn't watch the podcast. I listened to it. I had a full-time job and I was busy, so I did listen to it. I didn't watch it. So I guess
you never noticed the technical difficulty.
I didn't notice any.
So if you watch the video portion, you notice that we lost a portion of the video. Secondly, we've had some comments about Tim banging on the desk and his quietness.
Let me address that for a minute. I'm just so passionate. You know, it's banging on.
Yeah, consistently banging on the desk.
I like to play with my pens, and I think every time I click on, I touch the table. I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
I know one particular viewer was irate about my banging on the table.
He was yelling through.
I think at one point he was a podcast subscriber, and then by the end of it, he unsubscribed.
Yeah, that's what I heard.
I believe that was the reason why he did that. So I vow.
But I heard he's back because of the promise not to.
I vow, and I make this promise directly to the viewer.
That guy
I will do my utmost not to bang on the table going forward.
As much.
As much.
You can't promise.
I'm going to promise, yeah.
Okay.
I'm going to make a promise, yeah. When I promise something,
When
happens.
you do the romper room exit again, can you say bye to this person? That way they know that they're acknowledged.
yes.
Okay, that would be fantastic.
He'll be an acknowledgement.
Also, some people that watched the video portion understood this portion, and some people that listened to the audio portion didn't understand this portion. There was no news. Like, it was time for me to read the news, and
So
it went, and there was no news.
Yeah.
And the video portion, it kind of explains why there's no news.
Right. It's the Canadian news.
Yeah.
And because we don't have any actual news in Canada because of, one of the currently have, he will
Remember to cut that part out.
Nameless, right?
Yeah,
Cut that
we
part
just
out.
don't have
We
don't have
have
access to
access
news in
to
Canada
That, yes.
on social media.
Right. So
You'd have to search it
the
up
joke
manually.
was this is the news, and there was no news.
And it was a fair joke.
Yeah, I think it just wasn't set up properly. I think
Well,
we talked about that.
audio wise, you can't really hear.
There are ways to do that, but I mean that's just me.
So the weekend, Tim.
So my weekend
Yeah.
is an essay entitled "The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly."
It was.
The good, and in fairness, there was so much good about the weekend. I
Yeah.
had time with family.
Yeah.
Our Jays swept a series Friday,
Yeah.
Saturday, and Sunday.
The Jays were amazing.
The Bombers, who I want to talk about further about the Banjo Bowl coming up, but they won, and they
Yep.
won in convincing fashion. And we had a lot of fun on Sunday in the golf tournament, which we'll also talk
Yep.
about for a bit. But the bad was my golfing, which may also touch on as well. And the ugly was
if you were following our Instagram stories, you would have saw Tim doing some push-ups. That was directly after one of his best shots, which was also really bad.
So can I talk about my golf game and the push-ups, or should I do one now, leave the other one
You
till
can talk
later?
about both.
So I was doing push-ups because my good friend Paul Lasario gave me a challenge to do 50 push-ups
A day.
Yeah, and shout out to Paul Lasario, by the way. He is in Switzerland right now with his
The
wife.
Swiss?
He's going and climbing some Alps.
Oh,
Saw
cool.
some video on the
Instagrams?
social media, the Instagram. It's awesome, looks great. But anyway, so he's does a lot of personal training at the gym, and he said if I want to bulk up, maybe tone up my upper body, do push-ups. So 50 push-ups a day. I'm at 30 now. I was at 0 before I came here. You guys were setting up the camera, so I had a chance to do 30 because it was taking forever and ever and ever and ever. But I have to do 50 a day. So that's why every time I have a chance, I was doing push-ups. So in the video, in some of the videos, I'm doing push-ups. I think I was doing push-ups in week 1 for the podcast.
Well, we cut some of it out, but yeah, you went down and did push-ups while I looked up something.
When we did the golf video, I was doing push-ups too. And someone might say, "Why is he doing push-ups?"
And that's
it's also funny because it had to hit a bad shot. So in sports, if you have
Willie
a-
Mays
yeah,
Hayes.
Time I see you hit one in the air, you owe me 20 push-ups.
No problem.
Sometimes in sports, if you do something bad, like you take a penalty, you do push-ups. So I had a bad shot, so I was doing push-ups. But also, I'm trying to do 50 push-ups a day. Almost knocked over my water there. Secondly, I didn't bang on the table, though. Almost knocked over my water. We would have had to
Just a
cut
nice
that
little
out.
ting.
Ding! And secondly, golf game. So we had 4 golfers. I can hit from the tee pretty well. My short game, not so good. Putting, not so good. I'm not the best golfer. It's kind of funny, though. I was upset about golf shots I wasn't hitting. I don't play golf. I play once every
Well,
2
it was obvious, though.
It's funny.
Yeah.
Once every 2 or 3 years, I go golfing with the guys, and
Yeah.
I get upset when I can't hit a shot. I don't practice at all. I don't golf, and yet I'm somehow upset. I should be better, which makes no sense.
So in the first 4 holes, we actually took 2 of your drives.
Yeah.
Which was...
I
thought at that point...
Yeah.
I thought that at that point, we were going to have a great day.
I started off strong, and I can hit decently off the tee. Not straight necessarily, but I can hit pretty well off the tee.
Yeah.
Might hit somebody in the process, but it hit the tee. So that's the good. That's the bad. The bad is my game, which somehow I expected to be better, which was bad. The ugly was not so much ugly as that I met a nice police officer on the way to the golf tournament, which made me 20 minutes late.
That's correct.
And he gave me his autograph or some information on on the piece of paper. And so I will be in the next few months making a donation to the province of Manitoba. He was our CMP. Very nice guy. Had a good conversation. And I
Did he recognize you from the podcast?
he did not. I should have asked to see. So
that you should have sent him the podcast.
Yeah, I should have. Yeah, he probably would have taken it too.
Yeah.
So that was my good, the bad, and that's my essay.
Do you want to give him a personal shout out? Do you know his name? Officer.
Officer. Yes. So that was my weekend. How about your weekend?
My weekend was pretty good. On Sunday I went golfing. Saturday was the Banjo Bowl for the Bombers. And I think you touched on it just a couple minutes ago there. We went to the Banjo Bowl as a family. The whole family went. This is the second game the whole family's gone to. And the Bombers absolutely, without a doubt, destroyed any hope the Saskatchewan Roughriders had that they had a football team.
So 51-6 was the final score.
51-6, yeah.
I actually listened to some of the podcast for the Rough Riders after the game, and I think what they said was it could have been worse. It should have been 70-6, but
well, there was a dropped end zone.
Lawler dropped the end zone touchdown.
They took out Caleros in the third.
They took out all their defensive starters.
Yeah.
I think Augustine was a running back, which is fine.
He still got a big run.
Still got a big run, and we destroyed them. And it's funny because I wasn't at the game; I had to work, but I was listening to the game the whole time.
Yeah,
and it was really interesting because Doug Brown, who does the play-by-play on the radio,
shout out to Doug Brown.
Yeah, shout out to Doug Brown.
I heard he's not a listener yet, but
I hope
maybe we can get him on.
Does great play-by-play. He's an awesome, from what I understand, what I hear from other people, he's a great guy. But the whole second half, he was relishing the Riders losing. I couldn't believe somebody would be rubbing salt in the wounds that much. I think one of the times he said, I think he referencing last year when they were sick or something going to the bus. He said last year they were sick going to the bus and throwing up. This year they were throwing up all over the field. It's like, I cannot believe he said that. But it's funny, he referenced during the week social media comments by Rider fans all week about how they won by 2 points, but they destroyed us, and just like they just won the Grey Cup by winning in overtime by 2, and he was going off, and I kind of, it was crazy how much he was going, and that leads me to a question I have. Are you okay, like, if you're a play-by-play analysis for a team, is it okay to be biased?
Yeah, 100%. You know why?
Why?
This is why I have this answer.
Yeah.
They're only announcing for that team.
Right.
So, for instance, Buck Martinez for the Blue Jays, only announcing for the Blue Jays. Now, if he was on a national broadcast, yeah, you can't be biased.
I remember.
Now, Glenn Suter for TSN, 100% biased for the Riders.
Right.
That's just the way he is. He played for the Riders, I believe, or something.
He did play for the Riders. Yeah.
And
it was the '80s, so you don't remember any.
He played for the Riders, right?
He did.
Okay, so that's where the bias is not allowed, is on a national broadcast, but on a regional broadcast, 100% bias. If you watch the NHL in the United States, it is unreal what the announcers are saying against the other teams.
On XM radio, there's a Tampa play-by-play guy. Actually, it's Phil Esposito. He's like your crazy,
he played for the
crazy Uncle Phil. Who like, I can't believe he's on the radio, but it's radio. I guess people don't listen. Same thing with the Maple Leafs. Their play-by-play guy on the radio is like so pro-Leafs. But I guess it's a fair point. But anyways, I laughed the whole time listening to Doug Brown because it was
the announcer for the Saskatchewan Roughriders was also like just trashing Bomber fans the entire week leading up to the game,
right? Because
the Bomber fans were so upset about the headbutt. Right. This announcer, apparently, even the Rider fans don't like him.
Right.
So it's kind of funny that he's trashing the Bomber fans. Meanwhile, the Rider fans are like, it's like you're saying like crazy uncle.
Yeah.
It's like your crazy uncle that comes to the family reunion, and he's there because everybody accepts his position as the uncle, but he's the one that they don't like acknowledge as being part of the group.
Do you enjoy, just going off that topic for a second, do you enjoy destroying a team more than just
Yes.
narrowly beating them? Let's say by 10 or 15.
100%.
Some people, when the score is like, they feel bad for the other team, right?
I don't.
I don't. I want it to hit 100 on the Rough Riders.
Sweet Caroline comes on in the middle of the fourth quarter. We can sing it. There could be a wave. There's people that are like not even watching the game anymore because they're a little bit,
Right.
And
Well, it's Winnipeg,
Yeah.
Saskatchewan.
and it
I know
was
it's
great.
Saskatchewan. That's what else do you have to do?
There's a
other
lot of
than watch
Rider fans
football
that left in the
and
middle of
have
that
alcohol?
game. They were gone after after the first half, second quarter. They were walking down the stairs. I didn't see them come back. I don't even know where they went.
Your local pub, I suppose.
I guess
the
so.
closest one.
They went-
Hope they had a hotel room.
They went to go and watch something else.
Yeah.
The Bachelor.
So that was an awesome game.
little
Do you
bit.
want to tell them a little bit about what the golf tournament was for that we participated on Sunday?
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, we went into this golf tournament. It's called the Men's Classic, put on by Springs Church Inner City.
Springs Church is the church that we both attend.
that we both attend. Yeah,
And Inner City is one of the locations.
one of the missions and locations that is supported by the main church. And Inner City is basically it's an outreach program for the most part, but it's also got regular services on, I believe, Wednesday mornings and Sunday mornings. And obviously, to run a place like that, a building and all that kind of stuff, they need funding. And this golf tournament is one of their biggest fundraisers of the year. I know that during the ceremony of prizes that we won, what did you win, Tim?
I won a sport watch.
A sport watch?
Yes.
So during the ceremony of prizes that we won, there's lots of stuff given out. Some of our buddies won some big prizes, and some won a sport watch.
So
But
each person pays a certain amount of money to golf.
Yeah.
Gets them around to golf. A really nice meal. I think we had
A
some
great
beef,
meal.
some
Oh,
chicken.
man.
It's a buffet style meal. It was awesome.
Yeah, it was so good.
And then the local businesses chip in with prizes, and you can win something. So there's some massive prizes. Somebody walked away with a 70-inch TV.
Yeah.
Wasn't me, unfortunately. I was
pellet
hoping-
smoker, a
pellet smoker, yeah.
barbecue, an $1,800 patio set. Like, these were all donated prizes, and they were pretty unreal by some of the businesses there. I was talking to the pastor of the inner city, Phil Kleinsaucer.
So shout out to Pastor Phil.
Shout him out.
I've known him for I've got to say 20 years. And
Wow.
He has been at the inner city for pretty much. He can
Almost
correct
the
me
whole
if I'm
time?
wrong, but almost that whole time. So quite a number of years, and he's run it for a long time. And this tournament is a fundraiser for him. He's a great guy.
Yep.
There's news that we might have him on
Join
the show
us.
at some point. He is an avid fisherman.
Fisherman,
And he is
hunting.
an avid hunter, and so has a lot of knowledge, and he's agreed to come on our show. Actually.
Maybe he'll bring some of those props.
Maybe he'll bring some meat. One time I went to pick up some
Yeah.
meat, and we went into his garage, and he opened the door, and there were like big things of like
Meat.
a cow strung up from the ceiling or something like that.
You mean like a deer?
Pig, or
Like
a
a deer?
some kind of
Wild meat.
wild meat that was there. And he's
Yeah.
like, I gotta cut you off somewhere. He's a pirate, I guess.
No, he's not a pirate.
I said, okay, thanks, Phil. I'll throw it in my trunk.
How did you describe him though? When I was like, hey,
So
Pastor Phil said he might want to come on the show.
We like to bug Phil because he's follically challenged,
Right.
and that he has no hair. He often from the pulpit.
Thanks for explaining follically challenged.
when he
That was
speaks
great.
at church, he says that everybody else's head is not perfect, and God had to cover it with hair, but the people that don't have hair, their domes are perfectly shaped, so he didn't feel the need to do so. So he's a very honest fellow, that Phil, but great guy, and it was a great cause.
Once we're set up for multiple, we're set up for multiple mics, but like once we're set up for more than just two, we're gonna invite him out here, and he can talk about some fishing and some hunting and some other things that we don't really know a lot about.
Right. So it was.
And it'll be a fun
It
segment.
was awesome Sunday. And then quickly to go back, the green jacket. I want to touch on the green jacket.
Yes.
So I was presented the green jacket, which of course, when you win the Masters, if you don't know golf, when you win the Masters tournament, you get a green jacket. And I had purchased a green jacket, but it was for singing on stage that I do at church from time to time.
Yeah.
I thought it looked great, but I was told that it was unacceptable
On Labor Day.
On Labor Day to
It
wear
was on Labor Day.
the jackets because the Bombers were playing the Riders, and of course, if you know anything about the CFL, the Riders are very, very green, and so I was.
And it was a green
And I
jacket.
was told that if I hadn't worn the jacket, we wouldn't have lost in overtime. We would have won in
That's
overtime,
correct.
or won by more points. So,
Yeah.
so the idea though, the next week, which was the following Sunday, I was going to be presented the green jacket.
So we're gonna cut-
ironically for the worst.
We're going to cut to that video right now to show
Okay.
everybody.
That would be fantastic.
So if you haven't seen this video, it's on. We had it on Instagram. Check it out.
Check it out.
I would like to present the worst golfer jacket to Timothy Sanderson. Congratulations, Tim.
Thank you.
Next year, what will happen?
I won't enter the tournament.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. So, I thought it was great, and the jacket looked perfect as well. And you wearing the jacket afterwards during the whole thing was just perfect
Perfect.
for the worst golfer in the league. Hey, so Tim,
Yes, Greg.
sometimes you get a little weird, but this is a lot of weird.
Sometimes.
This is a question that might seem weird, but we asked everybody and we got some weird answers. Somebody actually said, well, let me tell the question first because that would make more sense.
Let's tell the question, shall we?
The question was, what should you name your fanny pack?
Yeah.
And the answers that I got were Fanny,
Too obvious.
yeah. Tammy,
That's the name of my wife.
That's
It's
correct.
Not sure why it should be the name of my fanny pack.
you should ask one of your daughters.
Right.
Yeah.
Or did Tammy say that?
Nope.
Did my wife-
It was
my
one of your
wife say,
daughters.
okay.
And those were the only two answers I got because I think like people generally were like, meh,
I think
he's going to name it whatever he names it.
Jordan was also suggesting.
Jordan was also suggesting. You got
Also
that one sent to you.
Far too obvious.
Yeah.
It's right there listed. I think that's way too.
And we already had to blurp that out.
to blurp it out. Yeah.
We didn't bleep it out or blur it out. We blurped it out.
Well, it could be a different Jordan, I suppose, but
Yeah.
motel. This is how we do it.
The answer to the name of your fanny pack. You've got it now. I know you sent me the name because you were washing it today, and you said, I'm washing
Washed. I put Frankie
Frankie.
through the
Dun,
washer.
dun, dun. Frankie.
and the dryer.
Ladies and gentlemen,
And would you like to know why I named my fanny pack Frankie?
I'd love to know why you named your fanny pack
well-
a male name that's also another Italian reference.
So
2 weeks in a row, Italian references.
Frank is an homage to a very good personality. That
A friend
was
of yours.
A friend of
And mine.
A friend of a friend of ours.
A friend of a friend
and
of ours.
I
yeah.
thought Frank was a little too. I didn't like the name.
You
Frank,
thought it was
so
too frank.
I ended an I with an IE to make it Frankie because I wanted kind of a
mafioso name.
an Italian kind of hey Frankie. Hey. So this is my the name of my fanny pack is for now is going to be Frankie.
Yeah.
I didn't even realize I'm hitting the table.
Yeah, if you put your arms on the armrests, you won't hit the table.
First half of the time, wasn't hitting anything, and all of a sudden
Now you are.
I'm
Every
tapping.
single second.
Tap tappy. I guess I'm
Tappity, tap,
tapping.
tap.
Tappity tappity.
So,
I feel like a shock every time I tap.
that would be awesome.
the whole podcast.
And you're still hitting it.
Back to you, Greg.
So, the next segment we like to call...
Time for the segment. Something you don't know about Tim. Do go on. Tell us more.
So, Tim,
Yes, Greg.
what is something we don't know about you?
Well, for starters, and I'm going to tell this story.
We just want one thing this week. One.
I am a history major. This is what I went to university.
Really?
For. History major, English minor. So, but that's not.
That's funny just in
Most
general.
people. Why is that funny?
I don't picture you as a history major.
Why is that?
Because I ask you questions, you don't know the answers to them.
When do you ask me questions that
All
I don't
the
know
time.
the answer? What question did I not know the answer to? You didn't know all this stuff last time about
What president was Gerald Ford?
what president?
Yeah, what number?
That's a numerical number. That's
But he has one.
Silly question.
Yeah, you don't know the history of it then.
Do you know the numerical number of Gerald Ford for
I don't.
president?
That's why I'm asking the history major.
That's like saying what was the age of Gerald Ford when he graduated, grade 8 or something like that. Like
Well, it would be
it's-
4 years
it
less
has
than 18,
nothing
so he
to
would have
do
been
with anything.
he
That's
would
a
have been
silly question.
14.
That doesn't mean I don't know history. Anyway, whatever. But back to the question.
He would have been 14. It's a super easy answer.
I'm just saying.
He's a history major that doesn't know history.
I'm saying
okay,
it's,
go on.
It's a terrible question.
Okay, so
It's a horrible question. The question you just
something
asked
I
was
actually
terrible.
this is one of the questions. This is something I don't know about you. You're a history
major.
Yeah.
English was my minor, which
Okay.
is actually funnier. So I do know a lot of history when someone asks me an actual question that makes some level of sense. But what's interesting is not that I'm a history major or that I know a lot of history information or trivia.
Yeah.
But there's a specific category of history that I know more than 99% of the population.
Oh, do tell me.
And it has to do with the name of my fanny pack. It has to do with
Oh,
the name
yes.
of what I'm wearing, which is a fedora. I know way, and I mean way too much about Mafia trivia.
Is this why you paint houses?
And this is what the reference was last week, where some people might have said, what is this clip when he says he paints houses? And in the next scene, you have Al Pacino and Robert De Niro saying,
I
do
hear
you
you
paint
paint
houses?
houses.
As, yes, I do.
And then I started painting houses myself.
But that's
Yes.
from The
Yes,
Irishman,
I do, sir.
which is a mafia movie.
Yeah.
And Frank Sheeran, who was an Irish assassin, wrote a book that said he killed Jimmy Hoffa.
Which
but
has been
the-
since
the-
disproven,
just
apparently.
been debunked. But he was trying to sell a book before he died.
Yeah.
He wrote a book called I Paint Houses. And this is what the movie The Irishman's based on.
That's why you got into painting houses?
And by the way, just because Frankie is not necessarily a name of somebody who's associated with the mafia, because there's lots of great Italian people who aren't. And of course now it's not nearly the same.
Oh,
but,
okay.
But in the movie they would call him and
Say, "I hear
they
you
say,
paint
I hear
houses."
you paint houses.
Yeah.
And he'd say yes, and they give him the information.
We actually saw a mafia. Was he an underboss or was he a major boss? What was he? The guy that we saw speak in Vancouver.
But his name was Michael Francese.
Michael
or
Francese, yeah.
Michael Francis, however you want to
Francis.
pronounce it.
Yeah.
Actually, and he was a underboss for I think the Colombo family in New York, and but now he speaks in a number of churches. He does motivational talks. He's
Yeah.
totally turned his life around.
And you follow his Instagram.
And I follow him, and he's got a lot of interesting things to say on his own podcast.
Oh, you listened to that podcast?
So let me go back to the podcast thing. Just to
Last week
no,
you
just-
said
just-
you said last week.
So
I don't listen to podcasts.
listen.
And then I'm like, wait a minute. After the show, I was thinking to myself, he does so because he talks about all these mob podcasts he listens to.
I want to explain myself
Okay.
because it was very ironic. I think someone said it was hilarious that I'm doing a podcast and I don't actually listen to podcasts, which is ironic on the surface. But
Is that ironic? I thought it was when it rains on your wedding day.
I can't stand Alanis Morissette. Whatever. That's a side point. So what I was saying,
I actually really like Alanis. She was great back in the day.
I couldn't.
It was like 1994, I think.
Her voice, it's like
Really?
nails on a chalk.
Do you remember what she was called before Alanis Morissette?
Horrible.
No, just straight Alanis.
No, I don't remember that.
She was like a pop star
Right.
before Alanis Morissette, and she was just
Yes,
called Alanis.
actually, I do remember that.
And the TV show How I Met Your Mother
Yeah.
had the girl named Robin Scherbatsky on it.
Right.
And she played a girl named Robin Sparkles, and she had a song called Let's Go to the Mall. And it was very much like an Alanis style of a song.
I did not know that, no.
Yeah.
So anyway, back to what I was saying. The
podcast thing.
podcast. So I listen to segments of podcasts, but
Yeah.
not through the podcast. So if let's see a segment from Michael Francis, I would go on YouTube and I click on a specific one. I don't listen through the format of podcasts.
You watch them.
I
You
watch
watch them on YouTube.
individually.
So you do listen to podcasts.
I listen to segments of podcasts, but not
You just
through
don't
the
have a
podcast.
favorite podcast or anything that really like inspires
Well,
you.
no, now it's this one.
Yeah,
This
this
is
your
now
favorite
my
podcast.
favorite podcast.
And you've listened to
I
it.
think I've subscribed.
Did you listen to it?
once.
You didn't even know we didn't talk about the Concords.
I listened to it once, and
Well, I'm not asking you to listen to it 10 times, just once.
I did listen to it.
But
once,
actually
yeah.
pay attention to see if the Concords are mentioned. But we are now, just to let all of our viewers, listeners, hangers-on know, we're on Apple Podcast, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, I think it's called Castbox, and YouTube. So if you have if you have a phone,
no excuse
and
not
you're
to
like,
follow us.
Exactly.
You
can,
mentioned like 15 ways in which they could follow us.
I know. And here's the thing. If you're like, even if you're using a BlackBerry from 1989, whenever BlackBerry came out, I don't know.
I love the Passport.
Back in the day, the BlackBerry was great.
It's fantastic.
Even if you have a BlackBerry, you can download one of the podcast apps and listen to it. So, the title of this podcast, you don't know this, but it's the first one was called
The Pilot.
The Pilot,
or The Pilot,
because you thought we were going to go on a plane. This one is
Pilots
called
fly planes.
This
Pilots
one-
fly planes.
is called The Shot.
The Shot.
The Shot.
I love it.
So the reason why we're calling it The Shot is because we're going to tell this story about the Minnesota Timberwolves. So Tim's really good at like teeing all this stuff up. So I'm going to let Tim tell you guys what happened. Tim, what I want you to do is I want you to tell them what this weekend was all about.
So we had,
This was December 2nd and 3rd of 2022.
as you know, we go on sports trips, and when we go on sports trips, if there is a sporting event on that weekend or week, we go to it.
Yeah.
It could be basketball, it could be baseball, it could be hockey. It could be football. And this particular weekend, I think it was Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 3-day weekend.
We actually went for 4 days. We went Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and came back on the Monday.
Okay.
But we only saw games on Saturday, starting at noon, starting at 1 p.m. on Saturday until 3 p.m. on Sunday.
That's right. And the Saturday game was an evening game, and it was a basketball game. The Oklahoma City Thunder were playing the Minnesota
With your favorite
Timberwolves.
player?
Well, I don't know my favorite player, but Canadian. His name is Dort. Is his last name? Do you remember his first name?
No.
No. So Oklahoma
Plays
City
on
Thunder
Oklahoma City, yeah.
has two Canadians, and actually Canada won the bronze a couple days ago at the World
With both
Cup.
these players on the team.
And Shea Gilgis Alexander. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing his middle name. And the second player that was playing on the team
Dort.
was Dort. Do you remember? Do you know
Dort.
his first name?
Dort's first name was...
Or still is. He's still living.
Well, that's not confirmed. Let me just find out.
No,
He
he is
did just win a championship
Yeah.
medal of
It's funnier if
bronze.
his name is just Dort.
Dort. It's spelled Luguentz.
How would you pronounce that?
Laguntz. Laguntz
Let's
Dort.
just call him Dort.
Dort. We'll go with Dort.
And I'm very paranoid about mispronouncing people's names because who knows? They're gonna follow
might
us,
listen.
and they're gonna say, "Why are
I
you
doubt.
mispronouncing his name?"
I
So-
doubt Dort will listen because I literally ruined a free throw of his.
And anyway, so Oklahoma City ended up
So
winning
we bought the
in
cheapest.
overtime.
We bought the
But-
cheapest seats.
So going back to that, so there were 4 of us on the trip.
4.
Myself, Greg, 2 others.
Yeah.
And I said, or I think Greg said, "Hey, let's move down to the because they do shoot
Let's watch
arounds,
shoot-around down
and
low."
nobody shows up till whatever. So
Yeah.
why do we have to sit up here the whole time?
Yeah.
Let's go down there to watch shoot around. And I think maybe like 5 minutes before they did the national anthems, Greg's like, "Well, should we go up?" I'm like, why go up? No one's
Yeah,
been here to see
you
the
actually
seats,
said, let's
right?"
just sit here and let's
Sit-
wait.
And then when somebody comes, we'll be like, "Well, sorry, these are your seats, no problem."
So at this time, when they're doing national anthem, you actually have to show your ticket now to go into these seats. So now we're in a predicament. A, we don't have any food. B, we don't have anything to drink.
I think I ate already, but
We did eat before that, but we didn't have any food or drink. And if we left those seats, we would then have to provide a ticket to get back into those seats.
so anyway, we kept staying there. Nobody came.
There was 2 seats on the end, and then our 2 seats. And it's funny because we had 3 seats. We had a seat between us just to hang out. And a guy came and sat, and he's like, "Hey, these are my seats." So I moved over one seat, so I'm directly beside you. And then I started talking to him, and he was from Calgary, and his buddy didn't make it. Long story short, this guy spent thousands of dollars on this trip. Him and his buddy each spent thousands of dollars on his trip. And because his buddy was sick, his buddy couldn't fly, and he lost out on... We went to the Wild game before that. We went to the Timberwolves game and then the Vikings game the next day. This guy had like super primo seats for all 3 games, and his buddy who was with him didn't come, and he basically ate that money. And anyway, so I move over to be beside Tim, and there's 2 on the end, us 2, and then an empty seat and the guy.
So we're expecting at any time. Of course, someone's going to, but we're trying to wait as long as we can before someone else kicks up. So anyway, so the national anthem is being played. Yeah. Nobody goes into those seats. They tip off. Nobody's coming to take those
but
2
two
seats.
People came and sat on the end of the aisle. These 2 older people came down, come walking down, and I'm like, oh, there's not many seats. Like, it's getting full down there.
Long and short of
it. But those 2 people sit beside you. Those 2 old people sit beside you. And I'm like, can you imagine if we sat in those two seats?
We might have just moved over, but so long story, very long story by the way, short. We ended up staying the entire game there.
Yeah.
And like we must have been.
I told Tim halfway through the game, not even halfway. I said in the first quarter, I said if anybody shows up, I'm just going to move over and sit with this guy, and Tim would have to go back to his seat.
Yeah, we were so close. 4 minutes left. The Oklahoma City Thunder have already pretty much wrapped up the game.
Yeah, so not a lot of people left
is
in there.
Shooting free throws, and we're so close that we yelled Dort's name, and I'm telling you right now, I swear he missed that free throw.
He clanked it off
because he heard us say Dort's, you know. And if you know anything about Greg, he's very loud.
His name is so like jarring. Yeah. So like when the arena is literally like emptied out and there's only like 3,000 people left in the arena, and you yell out the name Dort right when he's like about to release, it was. And we're like, it was like me to like to the other wall over there that you can't see to him, and it was just clank. Me and Tim had a good laugh at that. So that game, after the game, me and you walked down to the as close as we can, the next 2 rows down, and we want to go onto the court to get a picture taken. But we just wanted to get a picture taken at the end of the game, and that ticket guy is like, no, nobody comes on the court.
Yeah. So we got a picture that was close to the court, but not at
as
the court.
Close as we could get.
And then we went to walk the concourses, and we saw this lineup of people, and I think there must have been like 15, 20, 25 people.
Yeah.
And they were lined up, and we're like, and we're
on the thing it said free throw experience,
and we're like, hey guys, what are you guys here for? And they, we purchased this called Target Center Experience. That's where the Timberwolves play, and all of us can go down to the court and shoot a free throw, take pictures, something they wouldn't let us do before that.
Yeah, because they're like, no, nobody's on the court. Nobody allowed on the court.
So we just stayed at the back of the line.
so me and you stand in the
maybe join the group. And
me and you stand in the line, and the other 2 guys, they're like, no, we don't want a part of this. Like, I read a book by a guy named Dudley. One of the things he says in his book is to practice rejection therapy, which is like take 1 day out of the month, and all you do is try to see how many times you can get rejected. And the more times you get rejected, the better, because you learn confidence and leadership from being rejected. Because, like, what's the worst that can happen? Actually, let me just show you a quick little video of what he says.
Rejection's a fundamental part of life, and none of us are particularly good at getting it. And I think if you want to get good at rejection, and the better you are at rejection, the better you're going to be at life, you got to practice it. Rejection therapy basically says, I'm going to spend 1 day out of every month attempting to be rejected as many times as possible in that 24-hour period. And you discover 3 things as a result of that. 1, you are not rejected nearly as often as you think you're going to be. 2, when you are rejected and you expect it, it has 0 impact on your self-worth. In fact, it's funny sometimes. And 3, even when you are rejected, you are almost always offered something better than what you currently have. Rejection therapy is recognizing that rejection won't kill you. As a matter of fact, it's probably going to make you stronger.
So with that in mind, for the last 3 years, I've literally just been doing things outside of my comfort zone that I normally would get rejected for. Like, You know, in Disney, I went to the front of the Fast Pass line, and I didn't have a Fast Pass left. And I go to the girl, I'm like, hey, I don't have any Fast Passes left. Can I just go on Fast Pass line? What's the worst going to happen? She's going to say no, and she's going to forget me tomorrow? No, I'm going to go to the front of the Fast Pass line. So I go to the front of the Fast Pass line. She lets me go. So, like, over the years, I've done a lot of this. And this time, we're in the back of the line for the free throw, because in my mind, I'm like, what's the worst thing that can happen?
Let's premise it a little bit more to say the group that we were behind had all been a little bit in the tank for that we learned afterwards walking out with.
We didn't really know that while we were in line with them, but we saw that we saw them have a little ticket that looked like our game ticket.
Yeah,
and I'm like, we'll just try to use this. We start going down the stairs. You remember this?
I do.
And we hear the guy at the bottom go, hey, show me the email confirmation. And at that point, I'm like, oh no. And then Tim goes, let's just keep going. Just keep going. And he just like, keep going. He's like, Tim's behind me. Just like, let's go. Keep going. Because we're so close. We're like halfway down.
We'll keep trying. We're
going to keep going.
There's no return here at this point.
So at this point, there's like probably like 7 people in front of us. And the guy in charge, they were all in groups. And this is the third group of people that are going to do the free throw. The guy in charge is like telling him, showing him the email, and then telling him who's in the group. And as he's looking up to tell the people where his group ends, he looks back at the guy, and the guy that he was talking to looks up to us, and I wave. And I wave at the guy to be like, it's me, right? And so we get to the bottom of the thing, and the guy asks us for a ticket, and I give him our ticket, and he's like, oh no, that's the wrong ticket. And he goes, oh, don't worry. The guy in charge of your group said that you're the last guy in the group. You can go ahead and free throw.
So again, long story short, we basically ended the caboose of the group.
Yeah.
And they just said that's fine. They just took our word for it that we were. So we ended up shooting the free throw. And the funny thing was they did a group picture with the 15 of them, and we just went in the picture.
Yeah, we just joined in.
And we walked out with them, and that's when we learned that they were kind of half in the bag. But, they must, the next day they would have got this email from the Timberwolves, and they would have looked at it with a picture, say, who are those guys? Are these really attractive fellas?
They look Canadian.
That are beside us that are Canadian, like Dort and Shea Alexander.
So yeah, like that was an experience that if I didn't have the confidence from rejection therapy, that I probably wouldn't have experienced. So because I would have been too scared.
So I that's a great story, Greg.
Yeah.
And by just basically learning by failure, the more times you fail, the more times you grow. And I've heard that in many speakers where they talk about some level of that.
Yeah.
And so I really appreciate that you shared that. Now, I have a question for you. And this is a question that somebody brought up. I have a friend who, when I told him this story, said something. They said, well, that's cool, but when you do something that is a ticketed item, are you not stealing? But whether those people that went on the free throw, they actually physically paid money. Same thing for the people that had fast pass amounts. You didn't technically have that. Are you lying / stealing? And is that now become morally incorrect? Is it
questionable?
Wrong?
Yeah, but in essence, if they said, "Oh, you don't have a ticket, you can't go," I wouldn't have argued with them.
Right.
I wouldn't have said, oh, no, I'm part of this, I get to go, blah, 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 bang my fist.
Right.
I would have just been like, oh, okay. And I would have walked away. Same with the Fast Pass thing. It was more of a, hey, like, I don't have any Fast Passes left. Do you mind if I go in the Fast Pass lane? Right. And they're like, yeah, sure, whatever.
Right. But you didn't premise it that way. We didn't go down to the Target Center saying, listen, we actually don't have tickets to do this experience, but we're here from Winnipeg.
Well, they asked me for my ticket, and I said I didn't have it.
Right. So I'm really interested at what people have to say about that question and what they think of that answer. To me, it's interesting. Yeah. Not necessarily.
So the question is, if you do a ticketed item and you didn't have a ticket, is that morally irresponsible?
And specifically, was Greg's example morally questionable. But again, the experience was awesome. Like we'll tell that story for years and years and years. We're gonna have grandkids. Like, yeah, kids, remember the time I'm telling you
The
a
fact
story
that
about
we
what?
tried to get a picture on the court, and the guy was like, "No, nobody's allowed on the court." And then like I take a picture, I take a selfie of myself. With the guy in the background, because now I'm on the court. I thought it was funny. I got to take a free throw. It was all in the spirit of being rejected, and I'm okay with being rejected. So, Tim, this is the last segment of the show. We like to close the show off with questions from Instagram. So, I got a couple more questions for you. And I love the fact that I am the one that gets to ask them.
Yeah, I have answers for you. I have never heard these questions, but I have answers. I can't believe you asked that question. The numerical number of the president that Gerald Ford was.
Well,
The dumbest question.
you're a history major, you said.
Yeah, like
Okay.
it's a terrible question.
The
I hope
first-
everyone that's listening to watching
So
this podcast,
the first thing I gotta ask is
realizes how bad
what
it
is with your kids asking who our favorite children are? Because again, I get a question of who's Greg's favorite child. Obviously, I'm not going to answer that. My favorite daughter is Eden. A second question that we got, because that question just whatever. We'll move on to the second question.
I answered the questions, but you don't.
You answered the questions with
Daughter,
all
yes.
three of your daughters.
Yeah, but I
you
still
made me put all three into it. Yeah.
yeah.
So the second question is, when will Tim sing on the podcast? I think you sang earlier today.
I was doing little bits here and there.
Yeah. We're gonna work on a jingle.
Yeah.
So
I can't give away the whole cow. Just a little bit of milk here and there.
we're gonna give away a jingle. No, we're not giving. We're not giving away a jingle. First 500 callers have a chance to win a jingle. No, Tim's going to do a jingle.
What if somebody made us a jingle? So
If-
one of the listeners wrote a jingle for us.
If somebody can write us a jingle,
The timandthegregshow.com.
well, we don't have a .com.
I think I stole the music from somewhere else. With that one.
That was.
Tim and Greg Show.
But yeah, we will probably work on getting a jingle, and if anybody has a idea for a jingle, feel free to shoot us over some music, and we need like music and stuff in the background.
And
of it,
you
too.
won't get paid. We're not paying.
And we're not
anybody.
paying people right now. No.
No.
There's zero money being made on this podcast. So this last question comes from a new viewer.
We have new viewers.
Well, we have new viewers. They're all new.
And we thank everyone for subscribing to our podcast.
Yeah, anybody
from the
that's
bottom of
subscribed
our hearts.
And followed us now on our
Please
podcast.
give us suggestions.
Yeah,
talk
comment.
back to us. Ask questions. We love questions.
And if you can share the podcast out to your friends because you think it's funny. If you don't think it's funny, still share it to your friends. They might think it's funny.
And once you subscribe, don't unsubscribe. I think
Don't-
one person is subscribed.
One person
and
followed
then
it, and
three-quarters through they unsubscribe. So
Not even 3/4. Like it was like a day later.
Yeah,
They're
I was
like
like,
unfollowed us.
I'm done with this. I thought it was good. I listened to it. It's not very
It's
good.
not great. So the question comes to us from Jen Joyce Ash. Greg, we are the same age, and I am so surprised that you don't remember Romper Room. And I don't remember Romper Room. I'm sorry. I do watch shows when I was a kid, but I didn't watch that one. Can you guys talk about some other old school shows? Let's see if you remember Reading Rainbow.
Vaguely.
You don't remember Reading Rainbow?
No, I
LeVar
don't know.
Burton?
I do remember it, but very vaguely. I remember the name. I didn't watch it much.
You know what my favorite episode of Reading Rainbow was?
What?
And this is so vivid. I can even remember sitting there watching it.
Yeah.
LeVar Burton does a... So do you know what LeVar Burton also was in at that time?
The name is familiar, but I don't remember.
He was in Star Trek.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
He was the guy that wore the thing over his eyes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I know exactly who you're talking
Right?
about. Yeah.
So he was the host of Reading Rainbow.
Actually, now I remember it more when you say that. I put the two and two together.
Yeah. So he was the host of Reading Rainbow, along with being on Star Trek. They had this crossover episode where they taught you on Reading Rainbow how they did the transition from like the spaceship to the land, like when they would do the teleportation. And it was like a cup with like swirling glitter in it, and it was kind of interesting. So I do remember Reading Rainbow, and I remember the song. Do you remember how the song goes?
I didn't really watch it. I just vaguely remember.
Get a book, take a look. It's Reading Rainbow.
Okay, well, you remember.
Am
Reading
I
Rainbow.
horrible at singing, or am I really bad at singing?
I don't want to be mean.
Yeah.
But yes.
Horrible.
Yes.
Okay. So that's the end of our show, Tim.
I don't want to be mean, but you're terrible.
I appreciate your non-meanness.
I don't want to be mean. I just will.
I really don't know what to say from here on out. So that's the end of the show. Thanks for watching, and until next week, when we'll have even more important things to talk about.
And I see Jimmy, I see Billy, and I see Adam, and I see all you viewers at home.
It's in a book, a reading rainbow, reading rainbow.
Everything
All
here.
your stuff didn't get talked about.
And I started good. I wasn't banging on the table. Then I started banging on the table, and then
And
it was good
beautiful.
at the end. I was not bad.
Thanks for watching the Greg and Tim Show podcast. See you again next week. Remember to share, like, subscribe, and all that stuff.